we talked about varieties of herbs, and there's lots of basils out there, but there's also very many sages too. Um,
I'd like to talk about the sage that we call noir sage. It is very unusual. It was founded by, actually, it was developed in Israel a number of years ago because Israel was looking for crops that they could have commercially available. And Madeline Hill, who was known as the guru of herbs in Texas for many, many years, just happened upon it, buying it in San Antonio, thinking she was buying an oregano. And when she got home, discovered that it was not. And after a lot of research, discovered that it was this sage called noir sage. And it looks like a sage and can be used. It has lovely light green leaves. And when it's used in cooking, it really retains more of its color than the other sages do and has a more lovely, gentle flavor, let me say. And again, like I said, it was developed in Israel, which sort of like a new basil that we have now, a cardinal basil, which was found by a seed company called Genesis Seed Company in Israel. And it puts out a beautiful big flower that looks more like a celosia. And it's called cardinal because that's the color of it. So if you just say basil or just say mint, it's sort of like going to the grocery store and say, I'm going to buy toothpaste because there's toothpaste and toothpaste, but how many varieties are there?
Exactly.
So,
different
keep
flavors,
in mind,
different types,
different flavors, different types. We have very small leaf basil, which is lovely, which is great in containers. And you may or may not use it for culinary uses, but it's great for attractiveness and loveliness in your garden. And like we said before, you don't have to have a big space. Just start out and just put your feet in, just dip in the water and give it a try. You'll really enjoy it.
a little bit more about basils too. There is a spicy globe basil that has a really, really nice flavor and adds a little bit of heat to many dishes that you would want to add that to. And one of my favorite basils is green pepper basil. And green pepper basil is kind of unique in the sense that the leaves of it taste just like green pepper. So if you need a green pepper flavor in a stew or a sauce or even in a salad, it's a wonderful plant, an herb to add in that way.
And we do have all of these basils growing in our herb display garden. And I would invite all of our listeners to come out and visit us. And anytime we have a work day on Wednesday mornings, and you can call and we'll just meet you out there or whatever. We would love to show you our
we
herb garden.
have people stop by the office a lot and they just say, we just want to walk through the garden. And we say, go on out there, go check it out. Just don't take anything. Just check it out. So they like to do that.
Another type of herb that we've gotten some questions about are deer-resistant herbs. I know everyone's very, very anxious to find things that they can put in their yard that are deer-resistant, since the deer's population is hungry in this part of the world. And the things that we have found that are deer-resistant are Mexican mint marigold, thyme, rosemary, society garlic, and coneflowers. And coneflowers are a type of acanaceae, and that kind of moves us into an area about the uses of herbs. Many flowers are edible and can be used in culinary for culinary use. And coneflowers are some of those are edible, but the ones that we think of mostly as edible are the calendula, pansies,
nasturtiums, snapdragons, violets.
Yeah. So if you plant these in your herb garden or in your landscape bed, you're actually planting herbs that are an edible herb in there too.
I'd like to add a caveat there, though, that if know your source, know how it's been grown and what it's been treated with.
Oh, yes.
Yes. So just don't go to the store and buy some pansies and throw it in, because you don't know what kind of pesticides.
Right.
And we grow all of our plants not using pesticides, so we know how clean they are.
Right.
And that's particularly important in any herb that you're ingesting or using to cook with. So, and the herbs the herb use that we are most familiar with are culinary, obviously. Most of our herbs in the garden have that use, but there are also medicinal herbs out there. We don't really dwell on those so much. and then there are aromatic herbs that you would want to have around just because of their fragrance.
What are some of those?
Well, oregano is an aromatic herb, and of course all the mints are too. They all have a distinctive. And then
like lemongrass and lavender are good to keep like mosquitoes away.
Exactly.
Well.
Yeah, there are multiple uses for most herbs, and the best
they're also
way
edible, but
yeah, they're right. Exactly. They cross over these areas between culinary and medicinal and aromatic and then edible flowers. But the best way to know about the different characteristics of that is just to do a little research on whatever herb that you're thinking about planting. The other thing about herbs too is that we have been exploring a little bit is herbs as ground cover. We like ground cover in our gardens and our landscape beds, and they hold up very well even under on a pathway. So things like oregano and thyme, you get that wonderful fragrance, and yet they serve as great ground cover.
Yes, and they give you a different color, and the creeping thyme puts out a beautiful little pink flower, and you can walk on it, and as you walk on it, it releases that lovely scent.
Wow.
Use it between pavers where you usually have weeds growing.
I was like, I need some of that in my front flower bed.
We'll grow extra for you this
All
week,
right.
Jenny.
That sounds good. So where do y'all get your herbs from? Like your seeds or however y'all do it?
From the major seed packing companies. Like I said, we research to know whose seeds has good germination rate, whether they're non-GMO or not, if they've been grown organically, etc.
Right.
We also have used local growers. We are a half a day a week
right.
Grower, and that is a challenge in terms of bringing plants.
I've seen y'all up there on other days checking out your plants.
Well, we have to do that, especially prior to sales when we were doing the propagation. So we do use local growers to supplement what we are able to grow.
And even though we have nice greenhouse facilities, we have limited facilities.
Yes, we're running out of space at the office.
Exactly. Especially for the fall sale and the spring sale, we share our space with the vegetable group. And so there's always very limited table space in what we can grow. So we have to balance that between the space requirements and the time requirements, and then what we think we can be successful with.
So the other thing about herbs is that they've been around forever, and there's many types of legends and folklore that go with them. And you probably have heard that rosemary is for faithfulness, and for years it's been used in bridal bouquets, etc., for remembrance. And some of the herbs in some parts of the world have the folklore legend that they are for good luck and they represent love, etc. Well, maybe by the time that herb had traveled to mid-Europe, it had changed that, no, you don't want to have that herb, such as basil, because it means hate or something to that effect. But one of my favorites is about the lemongrass, which is used a lot in Asian cooking. And we grow it and we do sell it because there has been a high interest lately in the last few years. And it has a very sharp edge on it. It's a big plant. And in India, they grow it around their doors because that helps keep the tigers away.
Oh.
Because the tigers don't want to cut their little paws on it.
I don't blame them.
So if you want to
they're a very sharp edge.
So if you want to keep the tigers away, plant your lemongrass.
Well, I might have to plant some though. I don't want any tigers walking up to my house.
Or your kitty cats that come in to eat the birds.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk a little bit about one of my other favorite herbs, and that is something called cutting celery. This is something that we grow from seed. It's not really easy to find in terms of other growers. We seem to be kind of unique in the fact that we raise it and sell it. But cutting celery looks a lot like parsley, the stems of which, though, resemble a stem of a bunch of celery. So I know in a lot of situations, you go and you buy a bunch of celery, and you use a couple of the ribs, and then it sits in the refrigerator and gets very limp, and it's not not viable anymore. Whereas this plant is, you can raise it. Again, it grows and looks a lot like parsley, flat leaf parsley, but you can use the entire plant. You can use the rib, and if you let it get really big, it looks very much like a rib of a stalk of celery. But I don't recommend doing that because it gets a little tough. But if you use the thinner stems or and the leaves from those, it's all usable in terms of the leaves. And that's the other thing. Most herbs.
And has the same celery type flavor?
Exactly.
Okay.
And, yeah, a little bit more intense maybe. But if you're making a salad and you need to put it in, or if you're making a chicken salad or a tuna salad or a soup, and you want celery, this is a wonderful way to go out and just do that. Pick that and use it, and then you don't have that waste from buying a whole.
Yeah, I used 2 ribs last night, and I'm like, I'm not going to use the rest of this. Right. And I wish I could just buy like a little tiny one. But
exactly. That's when we should cut it up and put it in ice water and eat it, during the day. But we don't do that. We it sits in and then it goes off. So but that's one of my
That's
favorites.
Interesting. I didn't know anything about that.
Do you have one that's yours?
Yes, of course. I have mine today. Is St. John's wort. And not because it has any culinary characteristics, but it is a beautiful landscape plant. And this is another one that the legend of it is that it was grown around the tomb of Christ around Easter. And so they named it for St. John. But it is a wonderful shrub that grows 3 to 4 feet tall. The stem and the leaves themselves are beautiful, but it puts out a little tiny red bud, maybe about half the size of a cranberry. Mm-hmm. But when that bud opens, it's a lovely golden 5-leaf flower that has little strands in it that looks angelic. And they call it the halo flower, therefore St. John's wort. But it's a great plant in your garden, wonderful landscape plant.
All right. Well, we're getting the nod that it's time for another break. So we'll be back shortly here on Lone Star Community Radio, FM 104.5 and 106.1.
Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service is all about extending knowledge and providing solutions. We do that by using science-based information to create high-quality and relevant education for the people of Texas. More importantly, this outstanding education is delivered locally, right here in our county. We encourage lasting and effective change that helps our communities and our county thrive. We are Texas A&M AgriLife Extension, helping Texans make their lives better.
Health Center Southeast Texas is a federally qualified health center. We accept Medicare, Medicaid, and most major private insurances. For our self-pay patients, we have a sliding scale discount program available. Our health centers have qualified providers and staff striving every day to provide the best quality of care to our patients. Services offered are family medicine, behavioral health services, telepsychiatry, and pediatrics. We have 4 area locations. Look up the Health Center Southeast Texas online at hcset.com.
Lone Star Community Radio presents the Lone Star Radio Troupe. This talented cast will perform radio plays right here in the Lone Star Studios located in downtown Conroe. There will be a new performance every first Sunday of the month. And if you missed the broadcast, just go to Lone Star Community Radio's podcast or YouTube anytime during that month. Go to our LoneStar.com archives to find the Lone Star Radio Troupe's latest play that's available. This is Lone Star Community Radio, Conroe's 104.5 FM and 106.1 FM community station. Find us on the web at irlonestar.com. Lone Star Community Radio is a supporter to the performing arts in Montgomery County, Texas.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show, with monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast. Create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the station message line at 936-647-3776.
And we're back with the Extension Hour. Thanks for joining us again. I've got Mary Ressick and Shirley Dukes from our Montgomery County Master Gardener Association, and we're talking all about herbs. We've covered a variety of topics, such as starting an herb garden. Don't forget the bees. We've talked about different varieties. We've talked about landscape herbs. We've even talked a little bit about the folklore. So I know these ladies have some much more information to give us. So I'm going to let them continue.
Most of you, this is Shirley, probably are familiar with herbs when it comes to cooking. Most of us like to eat, and we like to change up things so that our family will like it. And we've been talking about basil, and we've been talking about parsley. And I want to say something about parsley. This is probably the one universal herb that everybody knows about. It has a great history. It was used in the old days, Middle European days. They scattered it around the floor to run away pests, and Charlemagne used it on the table of his banquets, making sure that people would have access to it, because if they overindulged, or maybe I should say when they overindulged, they would have something for their digestion. And you are probably familiar with mostly the curled parsley, but there's one that is more in favor now for culinary uses. This flat leaf parsley. It's really a little easier to work with, but either one, if you don't have flat leaf parsley and the recipe calls for parsley, go ahead and use your triple leaf. You get the same benefit. It's high in vitamins A, K, C. So herbs do have a lot of properties other than just giving us good flavor.
So what's the difference between like a flat leaf and an Italian parsley?
Well, it's just one of the varieties. Again, it's like the toothpaste. Is it Colgate or is it Crest?
Is the flavor a little bit different?
Not really. Okay. Not really. There's not that much difference in the flavors. If a big flat leaf parsley might be easier to chop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was cutting some curly parsley last night when I got it out of the refrigerator. My daughter said, "Are you cutting broccolis?"
Oh dear.
And I said, "Well, no, but this holding it in a bunch, I can see where it kind of looked that way."
Sure.
So, but I was thinking about that last night. Like, why didn't I get the Italian or the flat leaf? And so that's why when you started talking about it, I was like, wow, what's the difference between those?
The flavors are the same.
Okay.
I think it's just a texture thing with some people.
Maybe the strength of it or something too. And some of them, again, just like all the others, there are more and more varieties and more coming on the market every day.
Right.
Because breeders are developing more and more. You can get a seed catalog and look at it. It's just amazing and mind-boggling. We talked a bit about basil. Now, basil is one that you can use fresh, either in cold salads, and probably the thing that most people know is the caprese salad, where you use basil and tomatoes and mozzarella cheese and a balsamic vinegar, and you chop that up. You roll the big leaves up, and then you chop them into little strips called chiffonade, and you sprinkle it. And you can do that on your eggs or on your salad or whatever. But if you're cooking with basil, many recipes call for basil. What would tomato sauce be without basil and oregano? So the thing, though, with basil is that it does not have much tolerance for heat. If the heat gets too high, it will kill the flavor. So most of the time you want to wait and add it until the very last. Even though the recipe says start out with it, you will get a more intense flavor if you leave it and add it last. And the other thing, even though we do sometimes refrigerate our basil, you want to be careful of that. Most of the time it's cool enough in your house to leave it on the counter.
Well, that makes sense, since you were saying earlier that it's, our winters can kill it. And that would basically be induced winter for them.
We have to remember that we're in Texas. And when the label says full sun, it does not say full Texas
sun.
Right. So we have to adjust that way. I've had to change my thinking quite a bit on a number of these things. Mary mentioned the Mexican mint marigold as being deer resistant. That's also known as Texas tarragon.
Oh, Okay.
If a recipe calls for tarragon, it usually refers to French tarragon, and you don't often see that anyplace. But if you have a nice big French Mexican mint marigold, which makes a lovely bush, and again, another landscape bush, you have access to a really mild tarragon flavored leaf. And actually, and sometimes I like it better than the French tarragon because it is more mild.
And you're right, it does make a wonderful landscape plant, and it has a beautiful flower.
Beautiful flowers, which comes later in the season. So when some of your other flowers in your garden are, fading away, you get this great big bunch of yellow blooms, and it's a great plant. Nature has been very good to us and given us plants that have many uses.
Oh yes, definitely.
One of the other things that we can explore about herbs too is the preservation of them. And there's several ways you can do that. One is freezing. I know that one of the ways that I do that is to take an ice cube tray and to chop up your herbs and put them in the ice cube tray and fill the ice cube tray with water. So then you wind up with little cubes, once they're frozen, little cubes of herbs. And if you mark those, then all you need to do, if you need an herb, is to take the whole ice cube and pop it in a stew, because the water is not that much that it's going to adjust the texture and the liquid amount of the stew or the sauce or the soup. But that's a wonderful way to preserve your herbs too. Also, if you go out and cut a bunch of fresh ones in the garden, particularly parsley and basils, putting them in a glass of water, either on the counter for a parsley or for a basil, or in the refrigerator, is a good way to preserve them for several days. You can also take them and the stems of many herbs, rosemary, thyme, the major ones, and just wet a paper towel and moist, and then roll it and stick it in that moist paper towel and in some sort of a container, either a plastic bag or a container, and stick that in the fridge too. Those that keeps them, that you get a little bit more life out of them that way.
Now, can you do the ice cube thing with like an olive oil or something and freeze it that way? To use?
Yes.
I mean, I've seen that some. I mean, I've never tried that though, so I didn't know if.
Sure. I just know that the water method works really, really
Right.
well. Then the other thing is about drying. You can also dry, and when you have a woody stem type herb, for instance, a marjoram, you can gather those in bundles and attach them to one another with a rubber band or whatever, and then hang them upside down in a dark, cool place and let them dry out.
So you want to do it in a cool place. Don't stick it out on your porch where it's in the blazing Texas heat, right?
You don't want to do that.
Or worse, the humidity.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yes. And that would be not good. And so then it takes about 2 weeks for those leaves to dry. And then you can strip the stems of those plants and store those in an airtight container, just like you would do any other spice or herb on your spice shelf or herb shelf. So that's an excellent way to get a little bit more length of time out of your herbs too.
And we have, we're realistic. We know that many of us have the bottled dried herbs. I want to recommend that you check them every 6 months because they do have a shelf life.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't want to store them above your stove, and you don't want to store them any place like near a sink where the humidity will get to them because they will lose their flavor. And if you want the nice, fresh, full flavor of herbs, check the dates, change them out. And most of us, because those are so expensive, have probably gone to the smaller bottles.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a good thing to do. And that's the same for your spices as well. So check
my
them
husband
out.
just had a big clean out of our pantry.
Yeah.
Like a week or so ago. And I'm like, okay, well, I need new this, and this. So
Yeah, it's a wise thing to do on a regular basis
Mhm.
so that you know you're using the freshest with the best flavors, for sure.
But of course, we're partial. We like the fresh herbs.
Of course. But y'all grow the best. So
And then you know there's a difference in intensity between the dries and the fresh
Yes.
too. So you need to make sure you're aware of that.
so which one's more intense?
Usually, if you use the dried herbs, you have to be careful not to use maybe 1 teaspoon to 3 teaspoons of fresh herb.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're calling for something that's dried, you need to be aware that that's going to be whatever amount that is going to be. You'll need to increase it proportionally for a fresh herb.
Oh, yes, they are not interchangeable.
Oh, yes. Yes, I have learned that myself.
Well, it can alter the flavor in a dish.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That you're not expecting. And that would be no fun to expect to, taste something in one way and have it turn out to be something totally different. So anyway, we want to talk a little bit about our gardens at the extension office. We do the display gardens at the extension include several different types of gardens. We have, we have a vegetable garden. We have an adaptive garden. We have an herb garden. We have an orchard. We also have an earth kind garden. We have a couple greenhouses, and we have lots of floral areas around the facility. In our particular herb garden, we have tried to, in the display area particularly, we've tried to demonstrate, which we call them demonstration gardens, as many different ways to grow herbs as possible. And so we have a lot of our herbs in raised beds. We also have them in containers. And then we have a garden called a keyhole garden. And this garden is particularly useful, and it is the shape of a keyhole, in areas that are arid and dry, very, very much used in Africa. And basically what it is it's a raised bed situation built from a variety of different materials that has a compost bin right in it, a small compost bin. So you feed the compost bin, you plant into the soil around in the keyhole garden. And with minimum water, you can raise, they say that depending on the size, a standard keyhole garden, and I don't know what exactly standard is ours is probably about 6 by 6, and raised about 4 feet off the ground. It can feed a family of 6.
Oh, wow.
So you can, and you don't have to grow herbs in there. You can grow vegetables in there
awesome.
also. So that's very nice. And then the new thing that we're just trying out is we just created a fairy garden.
Oh.
And so that has been incorporated into our herb garden. And hopefully we can find some herbs that stay small enough that we can plant in there. But
I love walking around the little herb garden that y'all have set up there. That's when I need to take a break. I'll go walk through the bog, and then I have to go walk through the herb garden and see what's new over there.
We and I forgot to mention that we do have a bog garden too. But they're all very restful places when you come to the facility. And when you think of the scope of what we have available to us, we also and that we're only there half a day a week. It's really it's amazing. How wonderful it looks and how the contributions that everyone is making to that. In addition to the display garden and the keyhole garden, we also have what we call a harvest bed. And the harvest bed is maintained so that we can share our herbs with our fellow master gardeners. We also have in that particular bed a section that for our interns that is there going through the internship of becoming a master gardener. We have a garden there that we're allowing them to care for and be responsible for, to give them more of a vested interest in the program. And that harvest bed also is where if we go out to the community and we need to take samples, if we do a speaking engagement for a garden club or another organization, or if we're going to a school to work with them, that we have herbs available to take along with us.
Awesome.
So,
all right. Well, we're going to take another quick break, and then when we come back, we'll talk about what do you want to do if you want to become a master gardener, how to do that, and we'll talk about our upcoming Saturday class. I got clarification on the times, so we'll be back shortly at Lone Star Community Radio.
Does volunteering at a nonprofit horse sanctuary sound wonderful? Or are you a veteran or a veteran spouse and think trying a peer group session through a local Horses and Heroes equine program might be worth trying? Henry's Home Horse and Human Sanctuary, located in Grand Central Park by appointment only, is home to a growing number of rescued and donated horses. Visit our website at henryshomehorsesanctuary.org or check out our Facebook at Henry's Home Horse and Human Sanctuary for more information.
For those of you who like your partners, your gumbo, and your music salty, well, we're here to help with the music. Julian Shea here, host of Lone Star Country Nights Thursday, your weekly dose of roots and Americana and all the music that makes this part of the country special. We stir in Western swing, honky-tonk, Zydeco, Texas blues, outlaw country, and put a pinch of red dirt, and then we smoke it over a slow fire. Then listen to the results Thursday nights on Conroe's 104.5 and 106.1 and worldwide at irlonestar.com.
Our talk shows and music shows are looking for sponsors. Want to expand your brand awareness? Reach the hyper-local audience in Montgomery County? Lone Star Community Radio sponsorships accomplish this. Want to see our stats and rates? Check out irlonestar.com/sponsor for more information. Or call in and leave us a message at 936-647-3776.
And welcome back. We're here for our last segment of the Extension Hour here on Lone Star Community Radio, 104.5 and 106.1. And we're here talking with our master gardeners about herbs. So what did you ladies want to finish up with today?
I want to talk about propagating or recreating, cloning, if you would, some of the herbs. We talked about the seeds part of it, but some of us have become very interested in propagating because, as Mary said, there are certain herbs that are not commonly available from nurseries, etc., but we have growing in our garden, and we want to have more, not only for us, but to sell to the public. And we've become very interested in this. And one of the first things that we've begun propagating has been bay laurel. Now, we haven't talked much about bay laurel, but it's one of the herbs that if you cook a lot, you will see that it calls for bay leaf.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use bay leaf either fresh or dried. And you see them in the store. And like every other herb, it has multiple purposes. You can use it in cooking, but the fresh leaf or the dried leaf is also good to put in your cabinets to deter weevils.
Oh, see, I didn't know that either.
So, but the caution with bay leaf, it always says remove the bay leaf at the end because it's a very sharp edge thing, and your tummy would not appreciate it if you chewed it.
Oh, I always wondered why it said that. I'm like, well, why are you putting it in there?
It would be. I think it would, if you bit into a bay leaf,
you would know why.
You know why. You would certainly know.
But we began propagating it this year. They're a slow grower, but it has been very fulfilling. And what we did was we took one of the leaves or branches from one of our bay trees, which we have in our garden, and one of our other ladies brought some from home, and we made cuttings. And then we planted them and are raising them in the greenhouse. So hopefully we will be having more of those. We did the same thing with Cuban oregano. Now, Cuban oregano is not really an oregano, but although it smells like and can be used like regular oregano, it's really part of the mint family. However, it's easy to propagate. And again, it's one of those that we started in water and then transferred them to soil, and we ended up having about 30 of those available. Wow. And this is another great landscape.
It's a beautiful landscape.
Beautiful landscape.
As is the bay laurel, too.
You have a list of stuff to look at.
Yes,
wonderful to do.
Yes, you do. So propagating is something that easily can be done at home. What else? Did you have a question, Mary?
No, I just wanted to add that as part of our herb experience, once we become master gardeners and we decide that that's the area we want to work in, we not only take care of our garden and learn lots about herbs and then translate it to home, but we also get this propagation experience, which also can be translated to home, which is really fun to be able to start something from a seed or from a cutting and see it come to become a real plant.
Right.
And then, either in our case, sell them to the public or put them in our home gardens. It's really great.
Oh, that's awesome.
One of the other aspects of the herb group garden, one of the jobs and one of the things that we do is we do maintain a connection to Conroe High School and their culinary class. Over the last 4 or 5 years, the herb group now, and we've added the vegetable group, have gone to Conroe High School and tried to educate them in conjunction with their chef, Chef Kozak, about herbs and spices, and then, of course, vegetables. As a result of that, he has, they do at Conroe High School have 4 raised beds out behind the kitchen where they're growing herbs and vegetables and actually utilizing them in cooking and in their cooking and
that's
in all their
wonderful.
practice cooking. And often when they're preparing a meal for a board meeting or for whatever groups tap them to do that, they will incorporate the herbs and the vegetables into that
they've grown.
That they have grown.
That helps take awesome leadership of it.
And we have exposed them to not only herbs and vegetables, but we've also had presentations for them on bees, aquaponics, things that they might be utilized as if they go into a restaurant situation. More and more restaurants are doing farm to table or have gardens on site or rooftop gardens. So we really enjoy our experience with the high school group.
So what does one need to do to become a master gardener?
Well, the first thing is that you have to attend an orientation that I believe is being held in September.
It's usually in September.
And it's required before you can actually sign up for the classes because they want to make sure that you know what a commitment it is.
Oh, it is.
And it's really a college education. All of the instructors are either college professors or experts in their field. And we cover everything from soil to compost.
Oh, yeah.
The whole 9 yards. And then you have so many hours that you have to actually work in the garden.
Before you graduate.
Before you graduate. It's pretty much a year-long experience.
Yes.
And just like anything else, when you finish, that's when your learning really begins.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So to find out that date, as it gets a little closer to September, you can call our office at 936-539-7824. And you can also call that number if you have any questions, any gardening questions. We usually have 2 volunteers in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, and they're there to answer any questions. Or if you need soil sample test kits, they can get those to you. The Master Gardeners also have a Facebook page, and you can search for Montgomery County Master Gardener Association on there, and they're really good about updating that when they have upcoming classes and events going on. And also don't forget their website at mcmga.com. And like I said, there's a subscribe button, and they will email you when there's upcoming classes, plant sales, articles, things like that. I know I've signed up for it, and I even work in the office. So, all right. Well, thank you, ladies. It was great having you, and thank you so much
for having us.
For coming.